Anytime you put 5,000 rounds through any gun, there's gonna be a story.
Oh, you piece of...
In this video, I review the Masterpiece Arms DS9. If you've been following along with me on my shooting journey, I ended up buying two DS9s for IDPA specifically. Now the reason for that is because in 2022, IDPA came out with more lax rules on what you could use on specifically regards to bull barrels. So with that said, Masterpiece Arms decided to step up with an IDPA compliant gun that really pushed all the rules. And so I decided I wanted to check that out. With a price tag of $3,400, I needed a little bit more verification, and thankfully I have a good friend that happened to own one of these exact guns at that time. And that happened to be David at the Humble Marksman channel. Now, David was kind enough to lend it to me for 3 matches. In those 3 matches, I shot arguably some of my best matches at the time, and I had no malfunctions with his gun. And so at that point, I was sold. That said, I went ahead and ordered 2 of them. And the reason why I ordered 2 for my primary competition gun is if I end up going to a major match, I want to be able to have an exact replica of a backup should one go down. I know it may seem excessive, especially for guys that may think that may be a little bit higher on the budget. But for me, that's an investment in security. Should the gun go down, I want to be able to grab a gun, not have to think about fixing it, and get right back in the game. So, with that said, I had to wait 5 months to get my guns. By the time these guns were made and delivered to me, the IDPA season was essentially over, with nationals just passing by 2 weeks prior. And even if it come a month earlier beforehand, I would have wanted some time anyways to shoot them at a match. How they ended up arriving first, as I was in no hurry to really pick them up, my FFL is actually my home range of Mission 160, and Kevin ended up getting his hands on them first and taking a look at them. And he actually shot a picture of the barrel because it said Aardvark. And oddly enough, David lovingly named these the Aardvark because he really didn't like the name of the original one. So I jokingly said on my order build I wanted Aardvarks, and they delivered. And because I wasn't really in a rush to pick him up, I did challenge Kevin to go shoot a couple of rounds for him just to see what he thought. And this was his first impression.
Let her rip. Pretty nice. Can you stop it? Pretty nice. Oh my gosh, it feels. Is that my PC? That's my load? Pistol load. Okay, Paul, this is my pistol load, and it feels like almost like a 22. I mean, this. Really? Wait till you see his face. Oh, wow.
Now, Kevin is like a big brother to me and always a super good help, and my go-to squad mate for anywhere I go. But the one thing I do want to say and give him a shout out is he does operate and run an amazing facility out here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So if you're ever here locally, or you want to get better, you've got to visit this range. Oddly enough, you would think for someone who had to wait 5 months and spend $6,800 on 2 guns, I would want to go out and shoot them immediately. It took me about a month to finally make my way over to my range and pick these up. And when I started shooting them immediately, I was like, okay, cool. They're nice, they're great. And it only became when I started to put them in matches locally that I realized I had a big problem. And that was I would bump the safety with my support hand. And that had to do with the way the style of my grip was at the time, which is where I'd like to get high up with my support hand. If you've been following along with me, I've been shooting a Shadow 2 with the thumb safety, so you would ask, well, how's it that you don't bump the safety on that gun? The short answer to that is I actually do. once in a blue moon, but nowhere near as much as I did because this went up fairly easy. The Shadow 2 has a more tactile and firmer safety than the DS9 because it's actually really smooth and clean and easy to operate. And that's intentional by design for performance, for people that have a grip built already into this. So knowing that I was building up time with the CZ Shadow 2 platform, you would think like, well, you just spent all this money on these guns, why is it that you really just decided to hang them up for a bit? And that had everything to do with the fact that I was getting comfortable with the Shadow 2 and I'm shooting it very well. The challenge I had with that is that I cannot run that gun in its setup in IDPA because it's too heavy. Over the course of a few months, I ended up experimenting with various different platforms, including my old Walther Q5, as well as a Zev OZ9 Hypercomp. I started to go through the early 2023 major match season. I learned that there was just inconsistency in my performance and myself getting better. Although I had made carry optics A-class by this time, I just felt I wasn't really progressing as I would like to. And I think that had to do with me switching platforms because every time I end up switching platforms, I end up taking about a 5 to 10% hit in my scoring because I have to adapt to a new platform, get used to it, and fine-tune myself to it. Now, when I'm jumping from one platform to another platform that's very opposite, that I'm still learning the other platform on, that kind of can compound my progress towards my ultimate progress in my skill set. So as I pondered on about my performance and that now became my priority, oddly enough, at the same time, USPSA released the Provisional Division Limited Optics. And so I said, hey, wait a minute, the guns that I have sitting in my safe could potentially be legal for both IDPA and USPSA in their current configurations. And the guns themselves, I wouldn't have to do a thing to them. And so I said, you know what? What's really important for me right now is to suck it up, learn this platform since I've invested hard-earned dollars into it, and push to elevate my skills for both IDPA and USPSA. And if I commit to one platform, that's just gonna take out one less variable. And so I decided to commit to the aardvarks. Now, before I continue my story on that, if you like this video, I need you to hit that like button as that helps me out a lot. And you're gonna wanna subscribe because I will go over my equipment and setup for IDPA and USPSA with this gun. So you wanna stay tuned for that, as well as a 2011 and 1911 shootout with possibly this in the mix. So you're gonna wanna subscribe.
Are you ready? Stand by.
There has been a huge learning curve for me on this. And if you watch the other video in the DC9R, I talk about I like the grip of that gun because I felt I didn't have to change my grip. And I'm kind of eating my words on this when I said this. Now, I know you guys are going to say that you're supposed to ride it and so forth, but personally, I'm not going to change my grip to accommodate a gun. So here we are. I had to change my grip for this gun. And it took me at least 2 months just to get an operable grip for this gun for me to work it. The biggest thing with switching to a platform and you have issues with it is when you get that first match out of the way where you have no malfunctions. Well, that only came for me at my first major match with this gun. It was the Double Tap Championship in Wichita Falls. What was interesting is I started the day out slow, but as I progressed, I became more aggressive with it because I just felt that I could push it that much more because now I was confident that the gun was not going to malfunction. And so as you'd watch me throughout the day, you could just see how much more aggressive I came with stages. I could push the gun so hard because it was so well balanced and it's such a flat shooting gun that managing and pushing the gun at its limits is not much of an effort for me. As long as the gun didn't malfunction, I felt that I could extrapolate the performance out of this, and I ended up doing pretty well at this match for myself. So that gave me all the confidence to move forward and get better with this platform. I can tell you it took me about 3,000 rounds and probably about 2 to 3 months of about consistent dry firing with my new grip for my brain to comprehend that this is the way that Paul was going to shoot from now on. Now, let's talk about what it's like to own this gun with 5,000 rounds. Typically, when you get a gun that has really tight tolerances, such as this gun, and it's just custom in nature, a lot of these custom high-end guns can be a little finicky. I found that I had to do no break-in with this gun. Now, every malfunction I ever had with this gun was induced by either ammo or largely by myself. I talk a lot how I ended up bumping the safety. Well, what I ended up having to do is I changed my grip to something that would push my support hand forward more and also engage my thumb a little bit harder, creating a fairly neutral locking grip. Once I alleviated those, you'll notice that one thing I did add over the factory is I did put a shielded safety, because what I would do though, now that I had my thumb locked in place on the old safety, there's no shield here. And so what I would end up doing is my thumb would rub against the slide, especially on these serrations on the side. And what that would cause was the occasional failure to feed. And at first I thought it was an extractor issue because it could be too stiff, or possibly another issue. But once I looked closer, I learned that and I'll share this picture, that I had some skin on the slide. Although I couldn't really feel it that much, I at least knew that I found the problem. And once I started playing with my thumb at the range a little bit, I ended up having no issues. I will say that it is a little sensitive to what type of ammo you use. I did have a batch of Supervel 147 that was loaded a little bit long that it didn't really care for. It would have a hard time chambering, but it does run Blazer 115. It'll run 124, 147 as long as it's loaded correctly. The one thing I will kind of point out on the reliability of these, like with most of these more high-end guns, you do have to clean them a little bit more. As I've gotten used to this, I've become a little bit more laxed on it. At first, I would actually probably field clean it every other 200-300 rounds. And then now I'm to about right now where I haven't even cleaned it at all. And so at around the 2,500 round mark or so, I ended up doing a full clean of it. And that was because a lot of dirt got inside the slide release, and what that would do is cause a little bit of binding issues. And so when I'd hit the mag release, it would end up getting caught and not allowing the mag to drop. When I was learning to use this platform, when I would dry fire with empty mags, what ended up happening a couple times is I would shove the mag inside of it, not exactly perfect on my rotation up, and if it wasn't just ideal enough, it would actually get hung up and stuck inside of here. The grip on it is aluminum, and so aluminum is a little bit softer than steel, and although plastic we can say is soft, it won't disagree with metal mags getting shoved into it like aluminum will. Now, with time, of course, I learned how to perfect that, clean that up on my side of it, but I'm thinking about the guy that maybe not is shooting as much as I do or practice as much. You know, you're really going to want to think about how you get those reloads in and practice those. The shooting experience is amazing. And that's because Masterpiece Arms really did a fine job of tuning this gun to its limit. You know, they've really thought about the spring combination, having the bulb barrel with non-reciprocating mass up front to actually help with the muzzle rise of this gun be kept to a minimal. So your return to zero is really quick. And the transitions of this gun are nice and light because it's balanced well. And so for me to go from target to target is a very effortless feel. And what I love about this is the trigger. You can't talk about a 1911 without talking about the trigger. Masterpiece Arms sends this to you at about a 2 1/4 pull. They end up sending you a cert card for that, and I can tell you it is incredibly consistent. The reset is incredible. Gosh. and it's everything you would want. Those long distance shots for me become so easy to call. Whoa! I will tell you why I bought it. I bought it because they made this gun engineered to the absolute limit of everything you can do in IDPA. What that tells me is that it's intentionally a serious gun made for specifically a serious sport. Now, with limited optics, you may have different options on that, but when I actually tried this gun and it performed in my hands, I was sold at the time on it, and I still am. I love the customization of it. I love how I have options with this thing galore. That's why most people get this platform. And of course, I love the trigger, guys. With that said, this gun is definitely for someone that is very serious about competition. And what I love about it is there are guns with, I would argue that this is on par with quality fit and finish with that are $6,000 to $7,000, so nearly twice the dollar amount that this gun can outperform or be on par with. But I just love the attitude of that this thing was built to be specifically and successful in a certain category. And that to me is a performance-driven gun, and that's who this gun is for. Someone that wants to get maximum performance and a winning platform at half the cost, and you're not sacrificing a thing. That is who this gun is for. That's what I have for you guys. After 5,000 rounds, it has been reliable. It has been a fun journey to learn on. And if you end up buying this gun, you, and like the others that have already bought a handful of them where I live, are gonna love and enjoy these guns. And so with that said, we'll see you at the range.